is a franchise that has at least like 20 games in the main series, if you don't include remakes and spin-offs. And out of the 20 games, I have not even played.
So I'm just gonna see if I can, like, off the top of my head, remember which Zelda games I've actually finished. Let's see. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Breath of the Wild. Can't be it. Oh my goodness, is that it?
Six games. Only 6 that I've actually began, continued to play, and then ended at the ending of the game, finished to completion. I've been playing Zelda since 1998, but still I've only actually managed to complete 6 games of the 20 that they have in the main series.
No, you're a fake fan, or you're not a real fan because you don't like this in the proper way.
I'm a Zelda fan. That being said, I got a lot of shit to say about Twilight Princess that might make people unhappy, okay? Please understand that I am comparing it to the games that I have experienced. In the interest of grace, I am going to deconstruct Twilight Princess in the fairest way that I can. I am going to talk about something I like, and then talk about something that I don't like. You see which list runs out first. That's fair, right? Yeah. Alright, let's start off strong. Midna is the best thing about this game, alright? This isn't exactly a hot take. Not only is she a great companion character, but possibly the best character in any Zelda game that we've had so far. In Ocarina of Time, we had Navi. And Navi was fine. Very plain, blank slate, I'm here to help you. Classical, just the sidekick character. Very little personality. Navi's personality pretty much consists of, in the beginning, she calls you lazy and tells you to wake up. And then she spends 90% of the game being your Final Fantasy scan magic spell. And also telling you to do things like...
Link, go meet the princess and learn how to save Hyrule. It's at Hyrule Castle. Go meet the princess at Hyrule Castle. Go now to Hyrule Castle, Link. Go to Hyrule Castle and meet the princess.
Hey, didn't that tree tell you to go find the princess?
So she's not overbearing at all. I can't overstate how much Midna adds to this game. When you first meet Midna as a character, she's pretty much not a good guy at all. She's using you. In the beginning of the game, you are a means to an end for her. She doesn't care about humans. She's kind of racist. She's not friendly. And she's not really presented in a way that makes you think that she's always going to be your good buddy. But then over the course of the time of the game, she goes from being antagonistic towards you and towards humans to slowly starting to care about humans and Zoras. And, well, I keep saying humans, I guess Highlands, right? So she starts to care about the Highlands, she starts to care about the Zoras, and she sees the Zoras frozen in the ice. You slowly see her gradually change, and you realize that she's not a bad person. Something's going on here, you're not sure what, but she's not a bad person. She has empathy and compassion. It's in there. Something must have happened to this girl. And then halfway through the game, the best part of the whole game, besides possibly the ending of the game, the climax of the story of Midna's arc is Zant just pops out of nowhere after the Lake Bed Temple, right? And she just gets her shit rocked with Zant using the Fuse Shadow to control the Lineru, right? And she's dying. And you have to run to Hyrule Castle and save her life, and Zelda ends up being the one to save her life, and Zelda gives her life, it's kind of unclear how that works, to save her. And Midna comes full circle to realize that not only was she wrong to be feeling the way she was about Hylians, but she just turned it all around and decides that she wants to help, not just for her people, for the Twilight, but she wants to help Hylians too. And now all of her motivations become altruistic. She becomes your friend over the course of this game. Like, she becomes your true friend with a real personality. She's got a great design. She's got attitude and character and like just these spunky lines and sarcastic things she says. It's just great. Like for a Zelda game, like most Zelda characters, they don't really have a lot of character most of the time. The only other ones that pop into my brain from before Twilight Princess, Tetra's great, and then before that, which is kind of a little, in my opinion, a precursor to Midna, is Tattle. Because Tattle in Majora's Mask, while in design looks like Navi, attitude matches a little bit more of Midna's style. Not as good, and not quite to that level yet, but it's almost like you can see that they went from Navi, which is blank slate almost, to Tattle, a little more attitude, still on the design aspect the same, not much to go off of there, but a little more attitude, a little more spunk, and then when you get to Midna, you just have the whole package. There's a reason she's the goddamn Twilight Princess, right? Right? Okay, but now unfortunately we have to talk about Zelda, okay? And I don't mean Zelda the game, I mean Zelda the girl. The weakest version of Zelda we have ever had in a 3D Zelda game. Since the era of Talking Zelda, this has got to be the worst she's ever been. You see Zelda so few times in this game to begin with, and whenever you do see her, she's got all this, like, regal presence, which is like, okay, like, I get that she's a princess, but most of the time that you see Zelda depicted with lines, she has a personality. Even in Ocarina of Time, she has a personality. Have you ever selected, like, I don't understand, or like the answers that they don't want you to say in the, like, she has a personality. This Zelda in Twilight Princess does not have a personality. She is just the princess. She could be any generic princess. They could have set this in some completely other land and it would not matter. I legitimately think that if they didn't include Hyrule at all in this game, it wouldn't even matter except for the fact of Ganondorf. Zelda doesn't really have character, and it's more focused on Midna and the Twilight and her people. So they could have just been like the reverse side of any other. It could have been Termina, it could have been anywhere. It wouldn't have mattered. Because it being Hyrule and it being Zelda did not add to this story. I'm sorry, it didn't. Zelda is so flat in this game. I don't even look forward to seeing her in this game. Like, she adds almost nothing. The only thing she does in the game is bring Midna back to life, which is great, and then get possessed by Ganondorf in the end, and kind of help you in the end. But that's just because she's there and she has to. I don't like it. I don't like her design. She just looks very generic, elfish. Like, nothing wrong with elves, all right? It's just, she doesn't, I don't know. She looks very generic to me. Like, her whole design. And we'll get to the design of lots of stuff in this game. It's not just her. One of my least favorite Zelda designs, definitely my least favorite Zelda character as it comes to her personality, since she's had personality, right? Just flat, 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 flat. Before this, we've had, like I said, Ocarina of Time Zelda, pretty good. Majora's Mask, well, she barely made it into that game, so we're not going to count that. Wind Waker, Tetra. Tetra is like the best Zelda. Like, I have kind of a controversial opinion on my actual favorite Zelda, but at least tied with that one is Tetra. Tetra is fantastic, and she is just got so much personality, and she has funny lines, cool design like that. I love that cartoony design they have for Wind Waker. It really has personality to it. I know not everybody likes that, and that's kind of why we got the designs that we got in Twilight Princess, which I have feelings about. My controversial opinion, Skyward Sword, that Zelda, I think the relationship that Zelda has with that Link is the best Link and Zelda have ever been with each other. Not here, all right? Zelda in Twilight Princess? No. No, no, no. No. 2 thumbs down. Let's talk about something good again. Good thing number 2? Cinematic story beats and battles. When the big fat guy who, I forget his name, the guy that's like, oh, he speaks in the end. Very beginning of the game, he just comes into your village after you're just herding some goats and talking to your girlfriend, and he just comes in there and he just whacks you on the back of the head and shoots your girlfriend with an arrow, and they just drag you away, and it's got this epic music, and they drag you in the twilight, and you wake up and you turn into a goddamn wolf. That whole scene is just like, what the hell? Like, especially after like you've just been wasting your time in the village, like doing boring shit. Whoa, things are happening now. Great. Just a little later on, when you're in Kakariko Village, after Colin just pushes Beth out of the way in slow motion so that he can
Die.
and he gets kidnapped by the big fat guy again, and then you have to go knock the big fat guy off in a fucking sword/jousting match on the bridge into the endless abyss as he falls when you beat him. You're on the horse, and Link's all like, yeah, very cool. Part in the end when you get all the few shadows and Midna just like destroys Zant with using just a fraction of the power, and just like and just comes out of her helmet and just like impales him and it makes him explode or whatever. Midna's just like, oh, that was just a fraction of the power. Obviously, the whole point in the mid game where you have to save Midna's life and you're running around as a wolf in the rain, talking to animals, trying to figure out how to get into Hyrule Castle so that you can get to Zelda and help Midna. That whole scene that probably lasts a good 30-40 minutes of gameplay, maybe even an hour if it's your first time, you don't know what you're doing. And I got that piano music going, and you really think that you might lose your friend, the high point of the game. Because that's Midna's whole arc and turn to being legitimately a good guy. Ganon's shit-eating grin when you get all the way to the top of Hyrule Castle and you just come in there and he's like, got his hand on his chin, he's just sitting there and he's like, welcome to my castle. And you're like, fuck. The most badass Ganondorf has ever been. This is still the game that has the best final fight with Ganon that has ever happened. You fight Zelda being puppeted by Ganon, you fight Beast Ganon, you fight him on horseback, and then just a hand-to-hand combat sword fight, the coolest thing in the world. It's so cool. Like, it's the one part of the game where no matter what I say in this video, that part, so freaking cool. All right, wasting my goddamn time. This is the bad thing. This is bad thing number 2. Are we on number 2? No, number 3. I lost count. This game loves to waste my time, so let's talk about some of that, okay? The beginning tutorial section of this game takes an eternity, which would be fine if it were any fun to do. I have no words as to how bored I am from the beginning of Twilight Princess until literal hours into the game before I do something that I actually find fun. Let's just list off some things that are not fun, okay? I got a list, all right? I got a list of things that are not fun, okay? Herding goats is not fun, all right? Herding goats, going whoop on your horse to get them into the pen, and you just make circles around the field until they get into the pen, and it's very arbitrary, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes they ram you and you fall off the horse so you can get back on the horse and go whoop whoop again, get them back in the pen. Not fun. It does nothing besides maybe sort of kind of a little bit teach you how to ride a horse. We already know how to ride a horse, okay? We played Ocarina of Time, played Majora's Mask, we played other Zelda games. It all handles basically the same. This is needless padding. I didn't think it was very fun throwing an owl at a monkey to get a baby carriage. Buying a slingshot? Not fun. Displaying your slingshot skills to children. Rescuing those children from a cage with a monkey that has bars so far apart that they can squeeze out. Now you have to find bugs. Please, someone explain to me how any of these things that I'm talking about are legitimately fun to do. Aimlessly wandering around to find little dots on a map and then going into sense mode and seeing little cockroach looking things flying around and going rah, and then pop, and then the tears come out and you collect the tears and you do that 3 times, and this is going to take you hours in combination of all the times that you have to do it, and it takes so much time. I feel super bad for the Zora Prince that's all sick and stuff, but when you have to throw him in the back of the carriage and you have to trek across Hyrule Field with gates that, by the way, serve no purpose except for this mission so that they can be closed, so that you have to find keys to go unlock it to let the carriage through while your carriage is going around in circles on fire, so you can use your stupid boomerang and throw the boomerang on and and put out the fire with wind, which, by the way, I think that would make the fire stronger, all right? Transporting the carriage from point A to point B while it catches on fire and goblins come after you, moblins, bokoblins, whatever they're called. Not fun. I don't find it fun, and it takes a long time. This is the worst version of Lost Woods to date. I hate it. I can see how maybe the atmosphere of it is okay, but everything in practicality I don't like. I don't like the music. I don't like what's the guy called? The Skull Kid, or I don't know if they're called Skull Kid in this one, but the little imp that's like me, and then he calls the little the clankety clank guys, and then you have to be the wolf, and you have to and then you have to like kill them all at the same time, and then he laughs at you and he makes a wall disappear. Then you have to go fucking chase him, and you're like, and you just do that a couple times. You just do that over and over again, just to get to the part where you get the master sword, and it doesn't seem related. It's not fun. It's just annoying. Like they're just putting up walls for you to do something annoying and time consuming to put up another wall to get to. It's just there's these two statues and they're here, and then you have to like they have to jump, and every time you position them in a certain way, they both jump, but they're positioned differently. So depending on which way you make them jump, they're actually going in different directions until they get to the proper square. It's just trial and error. It technically is a puzzle that if you really wanted to think about it, you could probably figure it out. But what you're really going to do is just keep trying until it works. Another thing, finding random garbage for Midna to transport from one part of the Hyrule map to another part of Hyrule map, because it got there somehow. Oh, look, it's a piece of the bridge. Let's bring it over to where it goes. I hope you're paying attention that it was there forever ago, because like you just I hope you're paying attention. Like all these things that they added to pad out the game, like in between dungeons, which I only call padding because they're not fun. I just don't think any of these things are very fun to do. They all come off like manipulatively time wasty to me. It just felt like they needed something that took a proportionate amount of your time to complete, so that when you were done, you felt like you accomplished something, but it really just took your time, right? Like I do appreciate the whole thing where you have to get the iron boots, and there's a story reason as to why you need the iron boots, because they use the iron boots to best the Gorons in sumo wrestling, and you actually get to use them to do that. And then that's a great way to incorporate it into the story. And then when you go into the mines, you don't just use them to be heavy, but you actually use them for magnetism, which is an interesting way to incorporate them. We'll get to that. But in practice, with like actually doing the sumo wrestling, like it's funny. Like it is funny the first time you do it, and you're like, hey, look, it's Link. And he's about to sumo wrestling. He doesn't have a shirt on. He's a little skinny kid, and he's got this big Goron, and it's funny. But is it actually fun? Not really. You slap, you do a little slap, then you pivot to the side, and then you push them, and it's fun. It's not that bad, but it's whatever. The only legitimately fun thing I can think of that you do in between dungeons is snowboarding with a Yeti. And snowboarding does indeed bring us to Snow Peak Ruins is the best dungeon in this game, and possibly one of my favorite Zelda dungeons ever. And it's not even that it's like an incredibly engaging dungeon in its complexity or anything like that. It's just the idea. Yeti and his wife are just living there. They just decided to live there. That's their home. And it never comes off. Like, the only reason you even call it a dungeon is because you're playing the Zelda game and you know that it's a dungeon. But if you weren't playing a Zelda game, you're just like, hey, I'm just at this guy's house and he's making soup and he keeps trying to tell me where the fancy little mirror piece is that he found, and he accidentally forgets where it is, and you find keys to other rooms, and you get more ingredients for the soup, and instead he just takes those ingredients and he puts them in the soup, and it's funny, and he gives you better soup every time, and it just looks so good, even for GameCube graphics. It's good. And you're in a house, you're just going from room to room, it's cozy and cold at the same time. It's just got this great design to it. And it's an interesting concept. Like, it's not just like, hey, a random dungeon in the middle of the forest or whatever. No, it's like, this is an actual thing, a part of the world. So it's lore in addition to being a dungeon. And by the way, has the best item in the whole game. The ball and chain is the most fun item to use in a Zelda game. It's so big, you swing it around, and it is so satisfying to hurl that thing at enemies and just watch them just get obliterated. I love it. The fact that you literally take it off of an enemy that you beat that's using it, and you defeat him, and you take his weapons like, this is mine now. It's so good. I don't even have much else to say, just because I just love it so much. Like the atmosphere, the way it's presented, the interesting boss at the end, which we'll get to that too. So cool, man. I love it. I love Snow Peak Ruins. But unfortunately, none of the other items were as lucky as a ball and chain. Okay, because this game has some piss poor items. All right. I can't think of a Zelda game that I personally played that has more uninteresting, uninspired item selection. Well, let's just look at it, right? Let's look at the list of the items, right? Okay, so why is there a slingshot and a bow? Why is there a slingshot and a bow and arrow? I don't even know how to embellish on that question because it's so obvious that that's completely unnecessary. Why would you have two projectile weapons that both do the exact same thing except one of them is slightly worse? I don't know. And I feel like I remember that certain ones would only work in certain things, even though they could have just made it like just the bow and arrow. Like, just give me the bow and arrow. There's no reason to have a slingshot in the game. It just takes up another slot, to take up space, to take up your time, to get another item. Why do two different dungeons give you a claw shot? I mean, you get a claw shot in Lake Bed Temple, which is, okay, that's fine. Claw shot, it's a hook shot. Hook shot's a claw shot, it's all the same thing. That's fine. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, in Ocarina of Time, you get the long shot in the water temple. Okay. But you got the hook shot outside of a temple. It wasn't like the thing for a temple, because you get it to access the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time. And then in the Forest Temple, you still get the next item, the bow and arrow. And, but Ocarina had time, the Ocarina of Time had the slingshot and the bow and arrow. Yes, but you could only use the slingshot as a child, and you had to use the bow and arrow as an adult. That's different. Twilight Princess, you're an adult the whole time, and you have a slingshot and a bow for no reason. And now you have double claw shot. Like, why did we waste an entire dungeon item in the city in the sky to give me another claw shot, just so that I wouldn't have to land on something, and I could just attach and then go to another one? Like, I'm not going to say that it wasn't fun at all, the idea of being able to just like Spider-Man around, but it just feels like wasted potential. Like, just give me the two claw shots in the beginning, because now you're giving me the second claw shot towards the very, very end of the game, and I'm only going to be able to use it for that temple and like two other temples, which are both of the end game temples, which are mostly short. Okay, what about the spinner though, right? Like, the spinner's cool in the dungeon that you get it, and then never again. Like, the spinner, I don't know how they came up with the idea for the spinner. It does do some pretty neat things in very specific contexts, where like you go in the little hole and then you spin your little thing, and you see, like, you hear things going on at first. You hear it, and then you see it. There's like, oh look, it's pulling down the railing, and then you get to ride up the railing. Like, okay, it's fun, but it's very specific, and you really only use it in the Arbiter's Grounds, the Arbiter Ground boss, and then a handful of other times. And I get that Zelda does do that thing where you can only use items in very specific circumstances sometimes, but I feel like this is particularly egregious where outside that dungeon, you can't really use the spinner for anything. You hop up onto the spinner in the field, and you might run into an enemy once, and then you lose momentum and you fall off, and it's not a very useful item. Okay, there's only one other item more useless in this game than that. I can't tell you how much I hate lanterns in games that have a limited amount of lantern oil, or anything like it. Anything where you have a lighting mechanism that is limited, that could run out, and you have to go get more stuff so that you can see, or so that you can light stuff, and you might have to leave the dungeon entirely and waste your time to get more oil to bring it back. Like, it's not fun to do that. Like, it's just like, I could have had a Deku stick, and you could have just had one flame far away from where I need to get the flame. And like every other Zelda game, I could just take the stick, and I could still a challenge and a puzzle to go get the flame over there before it goes out. But just having to have oil all the time to light shit just feels very manipulative, and like I have to save a bottle full of oil, and if I don't, then I might have to leave the dungeon and come back. Like, there's nothing about that design choice is fun or good. It's just bad. A similar problem to the lantern problem, where it's just kind of time wasting, is the bomb variety. Like, I understand that on the surface, it looks like, oh, there's a variety of bombs. That's cool. I disagree. Because really all you're doing is saying now, like, hey, you're going to have some bombs underwater, so go buy these specific bombs. And if you run out of those very specific bombs, you're going to have a hard time doing anything in this dungeon. You have to go get more water bombs. Now, I do remember that they put some water bomb drops in the temple that you need them in the Lake Bed Temple. But still, if you run out, but you have other bombs, it doesn't matter. You have to have those specific bombs for specific things. And it just becomes annoying because if you don't have the right bombs, or maybe you used it as a normal bomb because it's all the bombs you had, and now you don't have it for the thing that you need, like, it's just, you could have made a new item. Just had bombs that were just, like, upgrade the existing bombs to water bombs, and then just keep upgrading your bombs instead of having to have 3 different types of bombs. It's just taking up space. Like, it feels like they had a wheel, and they had a certain amount of items they wanted to put on it, and they ran out of ideas. So like, oh, 3 different types of bombs? That's fine. That makes sense. Throw a fishing rod in there too. Let's talk about something good again. All right. So the boss designs. Now, save for Dayababa from the Forest Temple, who is uninteresting and I hate him. Pretty much every other boss design in this game is pretty good. They're pretty cool. Like, they have a nice cinematic intro to each of these bosses when you get into their lair, and they look cool, and they have different phases that are very cinematic in the way that they present them. They're a spectacle. Like, just watching somebody play these boss fights will probably be a lot of fun, even if you're not the one playing it. Like Virus, the Goron guy that turns into like this giant fiery guy that looks really cool, like it's like a living or almost like a like a arms and legs version of Sauron, right? And you have to take his chain, you have to trip him up, and like, I get it, like maybe like it's not hard to figure out, but it still looks cool and it's a cool idea. More feels really cool because at first it's just like coming out of the ground and you're like, oh, it's kind of like the one from Ocarina of Time, and then you think you beat it, but then like, oh wait, oh no, it's a giant eel, it's gonna come out of the ground, it's gonna like swim around. It's pretty cool looking. It makes me think of like the eel from Mario 64. Star Lord, obviously the best boss fight besides Ganon in the whole game. Very cool. Like, that's where that spinner comes in. That's the best time you're ever going to use a spinner, where you're just like in this big pit of quicksand, and all these dead guys are coming out of the ground, and you gotta get to the middle, and you gotta spin him until he dies, and then all the sand drains out, and then you're on the ground, and then his head's still alive and he's floating around, and then you gotta take your spinner and you gotta spin all the way up, and then you gotta get to him, you gotta jump across with the spinner to hit him, and it's just very well designed. Blizzetta, the cool like ice themed boss from the Snow Peak Ruins that was Yeti's wife or whatever. Very cool, very like definitely the prettiest spectacle of a boss in the game, where it's like everything's all icy and white and glowing, and the ice changes shape every time you hit it. It's very cool. You can see the reflection, like I said, like it's just very cool looking. Love it. Very, very much love it. And I love how when you beat it, their love creates all these hearts, and that's how you get the heart container instead of taking the heart when you actually defeat a boss. Their love creates the heart. It's cute. It's cute fun. Obviously, Argarok, the dragon. You get points for just being a dragon. The boss fight with Zant is really cool because it's like you're just revisiting each boss, and he just kind of copies their style with each individual mini boss to boss fight. And I thought that was a pretty creative way to kind of like, it's almost like you're going back through, it's like seeing how far you've come, but it also doubles as a realization that Zant doesn't really have his own thing, and he's just copying other methods of fighting. And then at the end, he's just like swinging his arm around, acting all crazy, and you're like, oh shit. I love that Midna's the one that gets to finish him off, because that's her Ganondorf. Ganondorf's boss fights, multiple, the gauntlet at the end, best thing in the game for boss fights, best Ganon boss fight in all of Zelda. I will die by that. Like, Ganondorf has not fought in a more cool, badass, complete, and fulfilling and satisfying way. So while it's all well and good that the boss fights are really good, the dungeons aren't good at all. I don't like any of the dungeons in this game. There are 9 dungeons in this game, and I really like 1, and I decently am okay with 2. Making 3 that I don't think are completely forgettable and boring. Just to spit on the grave of Ocarina of Time, the Forest Temple is by far the worst temple in this game. Where in Ocarina of Time, it's great. They decided to go the other direction with this one, and I just find the Forest Temple in Twilight Princess to be utterly uninteresting and boring, and it's got the Fire Temple from Ocarina of Time design mindset of going to rescue a bunch of monkeys instead of Gorons. So you're spending your time rescuing monkeys, and the design of the dungeon is it's in the forest. I don't know. It's very unmemorable. Like, I can't really remember individual layouts of the dungeon. I can remember little flashes of like this big flower that kept eating me when I thought that I jumped over the thing, and he's really far down there, and somehow he kept still eating me. What, I don't know. And then I remember like there's this part where you're trying to walk across these tiles, and there's a guy below with the tile, and he just throws you into the water. It's really annoying. I don't like that dungeon. I don't think it has any redeeming qualities. Goron Mines, so while it is a cool idea that the boots are magnetic, and instead of sinking to the bottom of water with iron boots, now we're magnetizing ourselves to the ceiling and walls, I will say, the first time I played the game, I thought that aspect was so cool that it kind of blinded me to the fact that, in practice, why did they make you walk so slow? Like, I understand that there's a realism factor playing here where they're like, oh, the magnetic pull's so strong and it's hard to walk, so you're going to walk slow. Then why'd you make the parts where I had to walk so long? Like, it just takes you forever to get anywhere in there. And outside of the times that I am walking on the wall of the ceiling, the rest of the temple is completely forgettable. I can't remember any other part of the dungeon when I think about it off the top of my head, except that it's in a volcano. There's some point, for whatever reason, that's where you get the bow and arrow. I can't imagine why they decided that was the place that you should get it. But that's it. The rest of the dungeon is just like, it's just generic volcano.
And then you have the Lakebed Temple.
And it really is just very similar to the Water Temple of Ocarina of Time. Like, it does look better, like it has a better design, I guess, in a way. But in retrospect, I've come to appreciate the Water Temple of Ocarina of Time a little bit more. But sure, it's not a bad design aesthetically. But in practice, you're still just going around a labyrinthian circle, figuring out where to go to turn on certain water supplies to get the water flow to go a certain way so that the water can go the way it needs to go so you can get to the next area. So instead of controlling water levels, it's more like Majora's Mask where you're controlling the water flow to get you into certain areas. And all I can remember anytime I think about that temple is it's a big circular middle room, and there's a bunch of rooms surrounding that middle room that I cannot keep straight, and I cannot for the life of me find interesting at all, and I always can't remember, is this the room I was just in? Is this a new room? Did I turn that one on yet? Is the water coming out of here yet? I forgot after I came in. I can't remember. Now, I don't like to say that the Arbiter's Grounds is bad, because it's not really bad, but it ain't great either. I did like the idea that, hey, I'm moving slow, and then I turn into a wolf and put my senses on and see that you have all these ghost mice on you. That part was kind of creepy, kind of neat, but besides that, the only thing I really like about the Arbiter's Grounds is the fact that it has a cool boss fight and that it houses the Mirror of Twilight at the very top. That's cool. Lore and world building, I like it, but as a dungeon, it's just another one that fades from my memory. It just doesn't really stick out to me, and this is one of the few that I always forget who even the mini-boss is in it. The Temple of Time sucks. The Temple of Time might be worse than the Forest Temple, honestly. Maybe slightly better. Because design-wise, it's just very claustrophobic. For some reason, the theme of Temple of Time, the theme of it is to walk your dog. Because that's what it feels like when you get the stupid scepter thing that I don't think... The Dominion Rod, yeah. The Dominion Rod, and you throw a light into the chest of Mr. Iron Giant, and then he just follows you around. And it's like a way worse version of the same thing they did in Wind Waker, where you could actually control him and move around like you were him. That was somewhat fun. The fact that I just have to kind of drag him along next to me. Why? Just give me gauntlets and I can pick him up. What's the difference? The Dominion Rod is the worst item in the whole game, because when you're not doing that, it does nothing, and that it does is not fun. When we're talking about City in the Sky again, like, Ukus, the little chicken men, they're really creepy looking. I don't like the way they look, but that's fine. I guess they need a home. I just wish I could remember what their home looked like outside of endless sky and floating gross dirt bags with propellers on them that you had to claw shot to. It's one of the most unmemorable ones. I can't. You're just kind of Spider-Manning around the city in the sky until you get to the boss. And I don't know, just design-wise, doesn't really stick out to me. I guess I don't hate it, but it's just, it's meh. As it pertains to the dungeons, I only like Snow Peak Ruins, the best one. And then I do think that the Twilight Palace is pretty neat because thematically this has been in the back of your mind the entire time you're playing the game. You know Midna's from the Twilight, you've heard stories about the Twilight, and now you actually get to go to the Twilight and go to the palace. I can say that I could have expected a little bit more out of it, but conceptually it still wins on being a cool idea to get to go to the realm of Twilight and actually go there to beat Zan as opposed to all of it happening in Hyrule. It gets points for the creativity on that end. And I do like the aesthetic of the Twilight in there a lot more than I like the aesthetic of the Twilight affecting Hyrule, where it's got this gross yellow glow. And then, of course, Hyrule Castle. One of the better Hyrule Castles. It has a very nice gradual build-up where you start out and you're just outside and there's no music. It's just raining and it's just very serene. And then you go into the castle and you have very quiet music. And things just gradually build up as you go up and you scale the castle and you get closer and closer to the top. One of the only Hyrule castles in Zelda that really feels like a giant castle. Sword fighting, my dudes. This game, Twilight Princess, has some of the best sword combat out of any Zelda game. It is kind of annoying how you have to find the techniques that you use in sword fighting, where you have to go sing a song as a wolf, and then the wolf goes somewhere, and then you gotta go find the wolf as Link, and then old school skeleton Link comes and teaches you a cool sword move. The way that you get it is kind of annoying, but once you actually have these techniques, they are so satisfying to use. Ending blow, like you fight them, and they get on the ground, but they're not dead yet, and then you get the chance to do an ending blow on them, and then that finishes them off. Shield attack. It's about time that my shield got to actually do something useful, right? You bump them with your shield, and then they was like, oh, and I'm bumped. Both the backslice and the helm splitter both basically serve to de-armor your opponent so that you can actually hit them better. And those techniques are so important to have in some of there's actually a mini boss in one of the temples. I forget which one, it might have been the Temple of Time, where if you don't have either of those abilities, the backslice or the helm splitter, you're gonna have a really hard time. But nothing beats Mortal Draw. When you get Mortal Draw, that's all I use for the rest of the game. You just keep your sword sheathed. Don't even draw it. Don't even draw your sword. Wait for your enemies to get close and wait for the indication to draw. And then if it works, and if they don't hit you and you draw your sword and it's an instant kill, that is the most satisfying way I've ever used my sword in any Zelda game. Bar none. But I'm sorry. This one's kind of all-encompassing. Hyrule looks kind of bad in this game. So when Wind Waker came out, it was all cartoony, right? We all know this. This is old news. And there was a backlash. And because of the backlash of Wind Waker, they decided to go full-on realistic to the best extent that they could with this game. And I really, really legitimately and deeply feel that was the wrong decision. There are people who sing the praises of the realistic graphics of this game, especially at the time. I truly do feel that it takes away from the charm of Zelda. Trying to make it that realistic. I mean, just look at Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. They have the better capabilities for graphics these days, but they still chose to give a cell shading and a nice softer look to these games. And it's so much better that way for this world. I really don't think that Zelda needs a gritty, realistic, edgy looking look to it. Like, I just think it takes away from the whimsical nature of the world. And in this game, in Twilight Princess, especially because it's aged now, I don't know what it is about the GameCube especially, but playing this game on the GameCube, everything has this weird yellowish blur. And I don't know if that's intentional, if that's a GameCube thing, if that's something they did. In this game, I swear everything looks blurry the whole time. And I think it's to soften the edges to make it look better than it really is. The overall design of this world, and even with the characters in most places, save for Midna and the bosses, I just think it's not very inspired and in some cases very strange. Some of the characters look very strange in this game. But we're really not even focused on the characters right now. Like, the world that I'm exploring of Hyrule, just nothing. I don't want to go there. Like, Ocarina of Time's Hyrule, I want to go there. I want to explore those towns. I want to go to Kakariko Village and look at Anju's Cuckoos or whatever. I want to go to Lon Lon Ranch. I want to go to that bustling Hyrule castle town. And I want to play the Bombchu game. I want to go to the Happy Mash Shop. I especially want to go to Termina, preferably when the moon's not in the sky, right? But Termina seems like a blast. I want to meet all those characters. I want to meet those people. I want to go to that town. They know how to party. I don't want to go to the Twilight Princess world of Hyrule. I don't find any of it appealing or interesting. And everything just is all rocky, or like everything's rocks or trees. And when I think of the Hyrule field, everything is just like a big giant gray or green, expansive with nothing in it. And then even when you get to the towns, it is my least favorite version of Kakariko Village because it feels especially empty. It just feels like there's nothing there besides the shaman dude, and then your own friends, and then Goron's. I never want to be there. Orden Village is fine, I guess, but it's definitely my least favorite starting area for Link by a long shot. I would much rather, in a million years, be at Outset Island. It's so nice, even though it's small. I love it. So homey feeling. There's just no part of Hyrule Field, Kakariko Village, Hyrule Castle Town, the Zora's Domain area, Lake Bed, all the places in this game. Like, I don't want to go to any of them. Like, most of it either just feels empty, barren, or depressing, even when it's not covered in Twilight. And I don't want to exist in that world, even playing it as a game. And it's really hard to deal with that while I'm playing the game because I don't feel like I like the atmosphere of the game because of all of it. I don't think it's designed in an appealing way. And I just really hope that wasn't intentional because I understand that the vibe of the game, the Twilight, is not supposed to be pleasant, but still I don't like it. Like, just because something makes sense in a game to do doesn't mean that it's a good decision for you to do it. There's more important things in a video game than for it to be realistic or for it to make perfect sense. It's tangent time, okay? See this right here? Something being fun is so much more important than it being real or realistic or making sense. It's a video game. Video games are supposed to be fun or to engage you and feel good to do. Just because something makes sense as it pertains to the real world or even as it pertains to its own world doesn't necessarily mean it's a good design decision for gameplay for you to have fun doing it. Like, I understand the game logic of the light being in the bugs, so I have to go get the light from the bugs and fill up the light vessel to revive the spirit of that area. I understand, I follow the logic, but that doesn't make collecting the bugs' light fun. I understand that lanterns in real life need oil, okay? And you need to fill up the oil so that it'll burn. Like, it makes sense. I understand that. That doesn't mean that it's fun to have to worry about in a video game, hey, I don't want to run out of lantern oil. When you're designing a video game, you get to not include the things that aren't fun if you don't want to. You don't have to include everything just to make it more realistic. Just look at all the games where you can hold as many items as you want and you never get weighed down. Most games, there are some, but most games wouldn't include that as a way to limit your items because nobody wants to limit their items to how much a real person could carry. Because then you could only carry what you could in your pockets and maybe a backpack. And that would suck. So designing your game, if the only reason you're doing something, if the only reason you're doing it is to make sure it makes sense, stop. And think about whether it's fun to do. And if it's not, don't do that thing. I'm talking to you, The Last of Us. Alright? and you making me find gasoline for your generators to power a thing just so I can go from one room to another when I could have just gone through the next room and not done any of that bullshit for no reason. It's totally fine if you want the games to look more realistic. I can appreciate the artistry that goes into making a game look good realistically, making the characters look really good, making the graphics look good. That's not that important to me, but I can understand that. But gameplay wise, making the gameplay make physical, real world sense, that's a very dangerous thing, because a lot of times that doesn't make it any more fun. Alright? So let's just slow our roll on that. Alright, so let's see. So, of all the things we talked about, I've had some good things to say and I've had some bad things to say. And based on the amount of time that I talked about them, you might think that I'm pretty split down the middle. But I've made a very scientific pair of graphs to illustrate my inner feelings on the matter. All right, I did think this through a little bit. So if you look here, based on what we talked about today, while I said a number of things that were good, while we talked about stuff today, the weight that those things hold are smaller than the weight of the things that are bad things. So you can see here, I've made a timeline, a vague timeline of where I felt low points to where I felt high points. And you'll notice that the high points go very high for a short period of time and drop back down very rapidly. Because the high points are very high, but then they don't last very long, and then I'm in a lull again. And you'll see that I only have really 3 high points in the game, where the rest of the time, not so much. So as you go through Orden, and Farron, Goron Mines, and the Lakebed Temple, I'm mostly at a fairly low, right? So for the whole beginning chunk of the game, I'm not really enjoying myself. Not really. I don't really get to a level of enjoyment until after the Lakebed Temple, when you have to do the whole thing with Midna. And that's when Zant pops out of nowhere. You're like, oh shit. And he steals your few shadows and he almost kills the both of you. And this whole thing, then you have to go save your life. That's a high point. All right. But I didn't really feel much before that. And then after that part's over, I'm back down because now I got to go get the Master Sword and play with the statues that keep running into each other every time they jump. And then I just keep banging. It's not fun. So I'm back down to 0 again. And then you keep going, and then you get to Arbor's Grounds. Now, I gave it a little bit of a bump. We're gradually going up as we go through Arbor's Grounds. Then we peak. Get it? We peak at Snow Peak. How appropriate. That's where the game peaks. That's why they put the name in it. Because they knew that was the peak of the game, right? So that's the best part of the game, besides near the end. And then I'm having a lot of fun. And then I get back down to Temple of Time. And I don't like it anymore again. Because nope, I don't like the Temple of Time. I don't think anybody likes that temple, actually. And then you go to the sky, and I'm still low, because I don't really, I don't like the sky temple very much either. And then we start to gradually come up again with the Palace of Twilight, because conceptually it's pretty good, even though in practice the dungeon's it's fine, but it looks cool, and it's a cool idea to get to go there. So we're getting a little okay, this is cool. And then you peak again, you have a pair of peaks, with the Ganon, with Hyrule Castle and fighting Ganon, right? So this is a very inconsistent experience playing a video game. So it makes sense now, because I would always get so confused as to why I would remember Twilight Princess well in my brain, but then when I would go to try to replay it, I would always stop. And I would usually stop somewhere around the Goron Mines, because I had already been playing for so long and not enjoying myself. I'm like, this is just a chore to get to the parts I really want to play, and then I would stop. And then years would go by, and I'd be like, I want to play Twilight Princess again. And I'd give it another chance, and the same thing would happen. Maybe I would even get to Lakebed Temple, and I would just stop again. And this is where I've been for years of my life. I'm like, why? I like Twilight Princess, I think. So why do I keep stopping the game? And now I finally understand that when I'm thinking of the game, I'm thinking of the high points. I'm thinking of everything with Midna as it pertains to the whole game, especially with the high point of her arc. And then I'm thinking about Snow Peak Ruins and how that's a really cool dungeon and I love it and it's the only one like it in any Zelda. And then I'm thinking about that final showdown with Ganon being so cool. I'm thinking about those things because those things are really cool. And even some of the other stuff I talked about today, like with the sword play and everything else, like there are good things about this game. Twilight Princess isn't an objectively bad game overall. It has some good elements in it, some really solid elements in the game. But a video game can translate into hours played. And as it translates into hours played, the majority of the hours that I'm playing in this game are doing things that I don't enjoy doing. Say you take 40 hours playing this game and 35 of them are doing things you don't really like doing. It doesn't matter if the other 5 or 10 hours are great because you spent way more time doing stuff you just didn't have fun doing. It's like Rogue One. Hot take, I don't think Rogue One's really that good. But the very end, the last 10 minutes, is so good. And I know it's just fan service. I don't care. I will literally just watch that part of the movie just to see that part. But you know how many times I've watched the rest of the movie? I haven't. And when it comes to playing Twilight Princess, you can't just pick at a chapter like an old school DVD chapter select. You can't just pick and choose where you want to play. You have to play through the whole game or not play it at all. And I just don't have fun playing through those parts that I don't like. And I don't like most of the items I'm using in it. I don't like the overall aesthetic of the game. There's just too much that doesn't work for me. And that's why Twilight Princess just isn't one of my favorite Zelda games. And it's still Zelda. And I love Zelda. And I will love every Zelda experience I had to some extent because it gets points just for being Zelda. But as it pertains to the rest of the games, Twilight Princess is lower for me. I mean, out of all the ones that I've played, it's near the bottom. I'm talking below Wind Waker, below Majora's Mask, below Ocarina of Time, probably even below Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is too different, as is Tears of the Kingdom. But here we are. I finally understand why I don't like Twilight Princess as much as I once thought. Well, this has been a very informative conversation about Zelda. I think we made a lot of progress here. So in conclusion, Twilight Princess Legacy for me is going to be having the best supporting character and the best Ganon boss fight. Those are its two highest strengths.
But you know that Wind Waker is the better game. You know it, and I know it. We all know it.